Facebook recently celebrated its 20th birthday. 2 decades of the social media giant have changed how we all communicate immeasurably. So, what will the next 20 years look like? Hello and welcome to Roundtable. I'm Enda Brady. Now, the world before Facebook was a very different place to what it is now. The platform changed everything, but has it made our lives better or worse?
Humble beginnings in a Harvard dorm, now a company worth trillions of dollars. Facebook started as a way to connect in the virtual sphere, connect to friends, stay in touch, but quickly the posts, photos, and likes became a world of their own. The connection with the real world faded, and people spent more and more time in the digital world, both on the platform and Facebook-owned Instagram. And so started the scroll. This proved incredibly lucrative as advertisers had direct access to potential consumers and knew a lot about them. In 2022, Facebook made $114 billion from ad revenue alone. User feeds have increasingly become echo chambers with misinformation spreading. It's harder and harder to know what's true and what's false. This misinformation can be dangerous. Elections have been influenced, even in America. Mob killings have resulted from false information circulating on WhatsApp. Minority groups like the Rohingya have been targeted. In the US, parents are concerned about the negative consequences of social media. Nearly half are very worried about their children being exposed to explicit content. More than a quarter worry about their kids being harassed, experiencing anxiety, depression, or low self-esteem. At a recent congressional hearing, Mark Zuckerberg saw some of the families who have been negatively impacted.
Show them the pictures. Would you like to apologize for what you've done to these good people?
I'm sorry for everything that you've all been through. No one should have to go through the things that your families have suffered. And this is why we invested so much and are going to continue doing industry-leading efforts to make sure that no one has to go through the types of things that your families have had to suffer.
Whether for good or ill, the social media universe Facebook popularized is here to stay. So how will the lessons learned shape this technology in the future?
Well, let's meet our guests. Joining us from Sussex in the UK is Hayley Brown. Hayley's a blogger and shares information on sustainability, self-sufficiency and do-it-yourself tips. Amanda Finch is General Manager of the Chartered Institute of Information Security Professionals. She's been a specialist in information security management since 1991 and joins us from London. Here with me in the studio is Bill Mew, CEO of the Crisis Team, which helps companies deal with cyber threats, as well as advising firms on cyber law, reputation management and social influence. And Rohit Talwar is a global futurist. He's an award-winning keynote speaker and the CEO of Fast Future, a research and consultancy company. Welcome to Roundtable to all of you. Hayley, to you first. The Facebook mantra and motto from the outset was move fast and break things. And I guess in the process, make an awful lot of money if you're Mark Zuckerberg.
Yes, I don't know if I can say that I've done the same, but yes, what I have shared online has been very valuable to both myself and my followers.
And tell me, 20 years of Facebook, would you say it's been a force for good or bad or somewhere in between?
I think somewhere in between. I think, you've always got an ugly side of social media, but then obviously you've got so many positives. And for me, I think it's the diversity and being able to see a culture online that you wouldn't necessarily see in real life.
Amanda, your thoughts on 20 years of Facebook? I mean, it's very difficult to narrow it down to whether a force for good or bad, but sum it all up for me. What does the 20 years of Facebook mean to you?
So, as you can see, I'm no spring chicken, so I've been around a long time, and I've sort of seen Facebook grow from very, very early roots. And I think Hayley's got it summed up. It is a bit of both, basically, is that in the early days, it had a limited breadth. And now I don't think any of us could imagine not having social media in our lives. Some of it's good, some of it is bad. But as Hayley also said, that it can be used for good things, but unfortunately everything that is good is also taken by the criminals. So we're now in an incredibly complicated world, whereas beforehand it started off with people sharing their photos and their holidays and things like that. It's now a massive money-making machine, and people are targeting, and they're getting better at targeting things. So it's just the volume's been turned up massively over the years, and we need to deal with some of the bad things that are out there, because some people are being targeted, but we wouldn't want to be without social media.
Rohit, very good point there. A lot of people get targeted on social media, Facebook in particular. I mean, do you think when Zuckerberg created this that he could ever have foretold what it was going to turn into?
Oh, absolutely not. At first, it was university students connecting with each other, and the Winklevoss twins actually came up with the idea. He took it on and then edged them out. But at first, it was just about people connecting, sharing, as we've already heard, photographs and content. It's just evolved over time, and no one today, no one in 20 years ago, 2004, could have predicted what it would look like unless you sort of looked at some of the stuff that was in science fiction. Now it's really embedded deeply in our lives. It helps us connect. It's helped Hayley build a following for her business. It's helped create social movements. But on the other hand, it's allowed grooming of children. It's perpetuated hate speech. It's allowed all sorts of things that we see as the dark underbelly of society. But collectively, it's taken them to 3 billion users. They're the 7th most valuable company by market cap on the planet. They generated 135 billion in revenues last year and 40 billion in profit. And that makes them a behemoth in corporate terms, where they can work with governments in ways that most people couldn't. They have way more influence. They have a lot of power because of the amount of employment they create.
Too much influence, would you say?
I think it's moving in that direction. I think it will be really interesting if you put Zuckerberg up against Biden and Trump in the next US election. It would be interesting to see what proportion of the vote he got. He would almost certainly lead to a lot of younger people turning out. And I think a lot of people have more trust in Facebook and use it more than they do government. They don't really interact with government much. So Facebook has more influence, more penetration into our lives, and therefore its power is far greater.
Bill, you've had some legal battles with Facebook. Just tell our viewers your experience of going to court, going to battle with Facebook.
It's been very difficult trying to hold Facebook to account. The regulators certainly haven't done this. The governments haven't done this. The police haven't done this. In fact, it took a well-motivated group of activists to actually take Facebook to the European High Court and to battle them all the way. We had to crowdfund our own expenses. We actually had to take them all the way against an army of lawyers led by, we had our lead claimant, Max Schrems. But we were successful at the end of the day in actually beating them in the European High Court. And that should have led to immediate action being taken against Facebook and potentially some of the other platforms as well who are equally guilty or liable. The problem is that the regulator in that particular instance, and it was the Irish regulator because many of the social media platforms and the large tech firms have their headquarters in Ireland, the Irish regulator failed to take action. Not only did it fail to take action straight away, and it led to the need to take a vote in the European Parliament of 541 votes to 1 to sanction the Irish for not taking action, but it turned out that the Irish regulator was actively colluding with Facebook to actually undermine the regulations in question, GDPR.
So the bottom line there is, do you think the Irish government needs these big tech companies based in Dublin and the jobs and the revenue they bring in?
Well, I think as a society, as a European society, as individual nations, we actually need to think very seriously about, well, there is good and bad on these platforms. Do we have to endure the bad? Why can we not do more to regulate? And there are regulations that are eminently enforceable, but we're not enforcing them effectively. One of the challenges here is Who should be doing that? Should we just leave it to the Irish regulator to take that responsibility? And if the Irish have a very favourable, cosy tax regime and regulatory regime where they're quite happy to play along with these tech giants, then should we leave it to the Irish regulator to be the ultimate policeman there? Or should other regulators around Europe or here in the UK actually be taking more action and actually to protect the people from the harms that we all acknowledge?
Let's talk about some of the good then. Hayley, just give us an idea what it's like to be a blogger and influencer and how the world has opened up to you and your business over the last few years because of platforms like Facebook.
I think when I first started out sharing my growing journey at my allotment, I never really had any anticipation for people seeing it. It was just a platform where I could document my journey. And then actually it started to get some traction, which was quite surprising. And it's probably been in the last 5 years that I've then started to have sort of full-time employment from what I share online. And then I also have a secondary business, a laser cutting business, which sells products. And they're products that I use on the allotment and in my social media and then sell to my followers. So I have quite a flowing business, I would say, of different areas. I think over the years it has developed. It wasn't something that I anticipated whatsoever, but I absolutely love it. I love coming into contact with so many people, see what everyone's doing across the world, because obviously this isn't just, you know, me in East Sussex. This is everyone across the world sharing what they're doing, which is, I think, absolutely brilliant.
So, Amanda, that's a great example, really, of someone using social media for good, earning a living, educating people, developing and growing a community. What are your reservations about the kind of darker side of what we've seen on social media and Facebook? I mean, it has been linked to increases in depression, anxiety, teen suicide, eating disorders. Do you feel Zuckerberg and his people should have put more guardrails in place?
Oh, absolutely. I think that Hayley is an example of a wonderful blogger, and this is what it should be for. But unfortunately, there are nasty people out there. And I think that when you look at the way that a lot of the social media platforms can provide an echo chamber for people that have dark thoughts and want to manipulate people and have bad ideas, that's where it's all really horrible. And you've already talked about people, you know, being drawn to suicide-like sites and having poor body images and things like that. And it's terrible that our children are exposed to those sort of influences. And I think at the Senate Judiciary Committee, what happened a few days ago, is that they were saying that these platforms have blood on their hands because they should not be allowing these things to happen. And they're certainly not really doing a great job of self-regulating. And coming back to the point earlier that anything that's there for good will always be taken by people to use it for bad. And we need to have more regulation in there. We need to have regulation that crosses different jurisdictions legally. Is that it's not going to be a self-cleansing environment. So it's got to be policed in a way where it will hurt these service providers or platform providers financially and with their ability to broadcast, because there's no other way of clamping down.
Rohit, how damaging was the Cambridge Analytica scandal, where users' data was being harvested, passed on to third parties, and in some cases political parties? How damaging do you think all of that was for Facebook?
In the short term, it had quite a big impact. They lost trust, they lost advertisers, they lost some users, they lost some revenues. But now they're the 7th biggest company in the world. We're all back. Over 3 billion people are using it. Most of those users probably wouldn't even remember Cambridge Analytica or what the scandal was. There's a small group of analysts and people like yourself and myself who still remember it and still are concerned about it. But that's the thing, these things are very short-lived, and the power of someone like Facebook is that they have the ability to push out content about them, create new services, create a new buzz around them that completely drowns out the noise of something like the Analytica scandal. And they're moving now at such a pace with AI that they also have the ability to change the narrative about those things. So you have AI now starting to automatically generate content and telling very different versions of the stories. So you have multiple versions of the truth, and it's just the start. They are one of the players who've developed these tools that could become the platform for artificial general intelligence. That's the idea of AI that's truly as smart as us, rather than a very clever dumb tool like ChatGPT. They're one of the key players in that, and they're giving that tool away to anyone to develop with it, which is crazy in some regards, but also means that they are going to have literally millions of people developing add-ons to that and developing their platform, which gives them even more power and will completely drown out the voice of, or almost completely drown out negative voices. So if you take Bill's campaign that we just heard about, it's going to be a lot harder for anyone to do that in the future when there are so many people lined up on Facebook's side and so many people making money out of it. And so that's, I don't know whether that was intended, but that's certainly where they're positioned now. And their concern is no longer governments. It's no longer whether the advertisers will stay with them, because you have to if you want to promote something. Their concern now is the battle between Facebook, Microsoft, Google, and Amazon to be the most powerful AI company on the planet. That's all they care about. Everyone wants to get to the biggest valuation, $3 trillion plus. To put that in context, Microsoft's worth over 3 trillion, or just about 3 trillion. That makes it bigger than the entire FTSE 100 in the UK. That's the kind of power these companies now wield. And so any attempt to influence them is going to get diluted. The regulations are already there to try and control them. It's, as Bill mentioned, the will of the regulators to actually do something about them, because they're such big employers and they're so central to the fabric of society.
Bill, you get a feeling that this is a juggernaut that can't be stopped. We have elections in so many countries this year. Do you feel that political parties are seeing Facebook as somewhere they can get to voters very easily, rather than, the endless knocking of doors, canvassing, campaigning, human resources on the ground?
I think it's unquestioned that the platforms like Facebook could be doing more. They have a number of flaws on their platform as it exists at the moment, where it lacks many of the controls that are needed to comply with the current regulations. They could be investing in the engineering required to introduce and to perfect those controls, to invest more in content controls and moderation, but they're failing on those fronts. Instead, they're investing a lot of the money in lobbying and in lawyers to fend off a lot of the legal challenges and actually to influence the politicians, because they're aware that the biggest threat that they face is potentially regulation. And we've reached a point where on whichever political election that we're looking at, it's almost universal that both sides of the aisle now see these tech platforms as a target that is going to be a vote winner to actually bring regulation to try and hold them to account. The question is, how soon is some of these further regulations going to be enforced, and how well is the enforcement going to be, and how effective is it? Because traditionally a lot of the enforcement mechanisms, like the regulators, have been woefully underfunded.
Amanda, do you feel that we're all so hooked on social media, hooked on checking Facebook and what our friends are up to, that users don't really care very much about where their data is going or who's observing what we like and subscribe to?
I think it's very much an it depends, is that certainly younger people probably seem less concerned about it. I think people don't realise when they're putting their data up how little control they have over it. The cynical security professionals obviously are a lot more concerned about that. But I think the thing is that people don't know what they don't know. So they're putting something up in good faith very often. And they don't realise how that's being used and how that's being manipulated and targeted. And if we come back to the AI thing, they don't realise how that data is being used to sell them things. And I think coming back to both points that the gentleman made were that that it's all being underpinned by big business. Big business don't want to upset the apple cart. We talked about the fact that we've got the elections up. Is that people are not worrying, or the political parties are not necessarily worrying because they don't want to alienate these big platforms. So I think different people are worrying about different things, but actually people don't realise how valuable their data is, and they're not really giving it as much protection as they should.
Hayley, you're a successful young influencer online. 20 years of Facebook, where do you think you will be in 20 years' time? Will Facebook still be with us?
I really don't know, actually. When I first started doing social media and things like that, there was other platforms, and there's been platforms since that have come out that have been sort of unsuccessful and that have tailed off. Facebook has obviously been around for a long time. However, I think there are inherent problems with the platform. So I think it depends on how that goes. There's so many problems with people reporting posts or information, and nothing actually gets done about it. So, as I say, it is that regulation thing that people might get fed up, and they also might get savvy to the fact that obviously what is happening to their data as they're watching these things, as they're uploading things online. And I think the more that it's represented in the news, then people are going to think twice about what they're doing online and how much it is in a public profile.
Rohit, give us your summary of Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, he's potentially one of the most influential men in history.
Absolutely. I don't think he started out thinking that way. And I still don't think he quite knows what it means to have that kind of wealth and power, and the impact and ramifications of any decision he makes. And so it's very hard to imagine what it's like being in his head and being able to have the kind of influence he has. At heart, I don't think he's an evil person. I don't think he set out with negative intent. They woke up in the late 2000s to the power of all this data they had, and then went on a feeding frenzy to monetize it. And I think right now, he's trying to be a kind of big, savvy businessman. He's making bad choices. So a couple of years ago, they bet the ranch on metaverses, and they rebranded to Meta, and they said they were putting all their money into metaverses. That didn't quite take off. The stock market punished them heavily. So now they've shifted the focus to AI. The stock market loves that. So I think he's also influenced by that kind of thing. My sense is that he's one of those people that sees the potential for the boundaries to disappear between social media platforms. I don't really care whether I'm posting on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or TikTok. I have to, because I have to format the content differently. But what I would love to be able to do is to just create the post once, and either it be pushed out to all those platforms for me, which we're getting to, or there just be one platform, and depending on how you want to view it versus how I want to view it, we'll get served up that content. And certainly over the coming years, AI will enable us to do more of that. And I think what we'll see is a number of niche social networks emerge then. So in Hayley's world, you could easily see social networks of people involved in green activities, in self-sufficiency emerging, where the people really are in that kind of echo chamber. And you might see people who are really interested in 17th century Dutch pottery and that sort of thing, and not wanting anything else. But then the question is, what do the Facebooks of this world do? The chances are they'll either buy them up, or they'll create the platform, the technology platforms on which these other groups can form.
Bill, just briefly, your take on Zuckerberg. Genius, evil genius,
we have to
phenomenal
look at his
businessman.
legacy. I think he set out initially with the best of intentions, but was somewhat naive. the way he's going to be viewed historically is going to be down to a lot of the flaws that have since existed. And he can use as many excuses as he wants. The thing is that when it comes to satisfying his advertisers, they can be really, really accurate in their targeting, and they can perform miracles in the way in which they fine-tune content. But all of a sudden, when it comes to content regulation and actually protecting people, they throw up in their arms and say, oh, we can't do this, we can't do that. I think actually there are a lot of excuses that have been held there. But also, we don't think that they're infallible. We've also already seen mention of the metaverse, and we've also seen with Elon Musk how quickly and easy it is to actually completely undermine a platform and lead it to almost complete destruction. What we could see is actually Facebook replaced in time. And I think video is one of the areas where things are really taking off. And I think YouTube and TikTok are actually gaining ground where I think Facebook is losing out. We'll see in the fullness of time, but I'm not sure that his legacy is actually going to be all that bright.
Bill, Rohit, Amanda and Hayley, thank you all so much. Remember, you can see more discussion and debate on our YouTube channel. Search for Roundtable TRT World, and if you like what you see, hit that subscribe button. But for now, from me and Brady and all of the team here, goodbye and thank you for watching.